Good evening. This is the May 7th, 2018 meeting of the Legislative Affairs Committee. Want to call the roll? Yes. Madam Clerk, please.
Roll call of the members of the committee. Councilor McKenna?
Here.
Here. Councilor Morabito is absent. Councilor Patch?
Here.
Here. Councilor Powers is absent. And Chairman Zambudo?
Here.
Here, a quorum is present. First item on the agenda is an ordinance relative to snow, slush, and ice removal.
Okay, Madam President, is this your motion?
It
Oh,
was
okay.
me and Councilor McKenna, so I'll let her start.
All
and then
right,
I'll-
since she's a
Oh,
member,
she's
well,
pointing
you're
at
a
me.
member of the committee. All right. Let's not fight it out. Who wants to start? Okay, there you go. Madam
Madam-
President.
Madam Clerk, do you want to just read it one more time so we can get it on the same page, and then I'll take it from there?
Sure. The first item on the agenda is Council Order 18-037, an ordinance relative to snow, slush, and ice removal.
All right, so this is something that came up after speaking with Councilor McKenna. We noticed that it was kind of a gap in the current ordinances, and we realized that it was something that we wanted to fill. We were very conscious when we were making this that we didn't want it to affect people in a negative way. So anyone that was handicapped or elderly or of any sort of disability, that they wouldn't be able to shovel their own property or handle it. We put provisions that made it accessible for everyone, but held people accountable that were taking advantage of this. We noticed that during the last storms over this winter, there were multiple times when kids were standing in the street waiting for buses or walking in the street to school, and that's really unacceptable. If it can take someone an extra 10 or 15 minutes to shovel a little bit more of their property onto the sidewalk, it was huge in terms of helping the kids in the system. And if we're going to hold, something that came up in this is if we're going to hold residents accountable, we're also going to hold the city accountable. So, you know, any pieces of property in the city that we're not taking care of, we hope that people do tell us about, so we can make sure that those are addressed as well, because we don't want to see a situation where elderly or children are in the street and not be able to walk or traverse the city because of a weather incident. So a lot of thought went into this and a lot of provisions to protect people, so it's not something that has a negative effect on any residents.
Thank you, Madam President. Councilor McKenna.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't think I have anything to add. I think she said it. She said it all. So that's why we put the ordinance in, because we saw the kids walking on the street, and we saw the kids waiting for the bus on the street because the sidewalks weren't shoveled, and it really disturbed us. So that's why we put the ordinance in. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McKenna. Councilor Patch.
I really, I don't know if we're here to take care of the elderly or
Yes.
and make sure that they're not punished. And I'd like to see, I know especially up in North Revere on Salem Street, that's been a problem since as long as I've been a counselor.
Right.
I would like to see DPW get some of those machines that they have that just do sidewalks. And that would, especially for all the main streets, because that seems to be where the biggest problem is. It's like Sergeant Street, Washington Ave. But yeah, I'm willing to go. We come up with some plans here. I'm willing to work on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Patch. Well, if I might, my concern was also that we were not going to harm the elderly, and I believe that's in the, it's an immediate exemption provision for the elderlies, right? Yeah, would you read it, please?
Section G of the new ordinance is exemptions. an owner or tenant, if expressly required to remove snow, slush, and/or ice under a written lease or rental agreement of a building, estate, or land abutting on a sidewalk within a residential zoning district, is of age 65 or older, or is disabled, shall not be subject to the enforcement and penalties provisions of this section.
That's great. Now that, since we have our Director of Finance here, I can bring him up and ask him if we can afford to buy some sidewalk machines.
Yes, hello. Depending on the cost, I don't know what the cost is, but, you know, the reasonable amount of money that you can use to, you know, buy equipment. We have free cash.
Yeah, I was going to say, is free cash.
So, but depending, can we afford it, is depending on whatever the amount is, and if it's a reasonable amount,
I mean,
we do have an amount of free cash.
I don't expect they're going to be a tremendous amount of money, but they, you know, they're probably $5,000 or $6,000 a piece or whatever.
And they have,
More bucks? Okay.
what do you say?
So say they're 10,000. Huh? It's a Bobcat? Okay. So I think there's a way to get free cash to do this.
Yeah, so,
It's not like they're 100,000 apiece, I'm
no,
sure.
it's not.
So let me call on my colleague, who's the DPW expert here, Council Novoselsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's a great idea. You know, I think they've taken care of the elderly and the disabled, which was my concern. I just have two, I think, minor issues and a clarification on item C, requirements for snow and/or slush on curb ramps. And the next to last line down, it says 42 inches wide from the sidewalk to the street. I think that needs a little more clarification because it should be on the side, I think it should say on the sidewalk to the curb. And because, yeah, so I think those clarify that it's on the sidewalk, 42 inches, you know, it's like from the curb back onto the sidewalk, something to that effect. That's number one. Number two is, I'm just questioning the 3-hour limit that people have to remove within 3 hours. I think it should be longer, and I say for for several reasons. Number one, if it snows in the middle of the day and people have gone to work, they still have to come home, and they were still able to go to work. They're at work and there's potentially nobody to shovel their sidewalk. The other issue is if it's on a weekend, the kids aren't going to school, and I think the hours should be expanded some, whether it be 6 to 12, but I just think 3 is unreasonable. That's,
Council Guanasso.
Mr. Chairman, I honestly believe that, 3 hours is absolutely ludicrous, based on the fact that if it's a nasty storm, the school children are going to be home anyway. And so the premise of doing this ordinance, which I think is very doable and justifiable, but we also have to bear in mind that reasoning comes into being someplace here, and I think 3 hours is such a short time. And again, if it's the main purpose of the ordinance is to help the school children, which I 100% agree with, and I think we should extend that 3 hours to be 12 hours and give opportunity, because, again, if there's no school, the kids will be in the home anyway. And I think also there should be some sort of asterisk beside that where the bus stops are, where the children get picked up, that should be the city's responsibility to make sure that area is cleaned. And so little common sense helps here, and I think the ordinance in its face is what we need to do, but we have to also put reasonable time frames in here and responsibilities to who does the work.
I think as far as the pathway for the kids to get off to the bus, that doesn't even have to be in here. That should be dictated from the administration to the DPW that has to be done. I don't think it needs to be part of this. Huh? Oh, so perhaps we do put it in then. It'd be the city's responsibility to cut a pathway for the buses for the children. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, well, one more, we have a committee at the next meeting. Yeah, so we can put it in,
Mr.
we can put these amendments in and we can
Right.
tweak them until the next meeting and then we can pass this.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just a point of information on the bus stops. You have 3 different scenarios, through you to Council Guanasso. The bus stops that are operated by Samusa are actually cleaned by Samusa, and they do come around and do the bus stops. The ones that are not Samusa, the city gets the community team from the Suffolk County Sheriff's Office to do where they can, and the city uses their Bobcat at locations. There may be a few other bus stops that aren't covered by anybody, that sometimes the MBTA does come around, depending on their staffing. So I don't know which way we want to go and throw everything on us.
Well,
And they'll walk away and say, we don't have to do anything. I don't know, I'm just throwing it
Then
up
that begs
in
the
the air.
question then, Counselor, why is it that 2 counselors saw school children out in the street when it wasn't plowed? It's 'cause-
The answer to that, Counselor, is the kids don't use the bus stops. The T bus stops. And the school bus stops are not marked. There isn't one bus stop in the city for a school bus stop in this city, so you can't tell where the bus stops are. There's no marked locations for school bus stops.
If I can interrupt for a second here, perhaps we can get the school department to give a list of the bus stops to the DPW so that we can do this. Correct? Sounds reasonable.
The kids,
Councilor McKenna.
the kids know, I mean, the same bus stops have been designated for different areas for the last 20 years. So the kids do know. And the other thing is that I have a problem with the businesses, because there are a lot of businesses that when the kids, not every kid takes a bus. A lot of kids walk. But there are businesses that don't shovel in front of, they don't shovel the sidewalks. So that's my biggest problem with businesses. I think the businesses should be held accountable, the city should be held accountable, and you're right, maybe, there should be a list of bus stops from the DPW to know where they are, but these bus stops have been in existence for 20, 25 years. No, I know they're not marked, but the kids know where they are, and the schools know where they are. Maybe we should mark them.
Point of information, again, Mr. Chairman. I believe in our ordinances, there may be, I only know of one bus stop that's designated as a bus stop. And I know in order to make a legal bus stop, there has to be posted and put in our ordinances through the Traffic Commission as a bus stop. So there will be, even school buses.
Maybe that's what we have to
Well,
do.
so I'm just giving you information. It's not
Okay,
that
so,
I'm throwing down
so this
points,
is what we need to do. We need to designate the bus stops through the Traffic Commission, get that list to the DPW.
Have them posted.
And, there's a lot more to this than we thought, isn't there?
I didn't mean to throw a monkey wrench into it,
No,
because I believe it's
it's
a good
important
thing,
if we're
but
gonna
I
do
want to make
this.
sure everything is covered the right way.
We want to do it right. If we're going to do it, we don't want some loophole left in there. Council McKenna.
I just think that what might happen is we might run into a problem with having signs in front of people's houses, because most of the bus stops for the school happen in front of people's houses. So that might be a problem. But I do agree with my counselor on my left that I think they should be posted, definitely.
Perhaps we post it on the curb or something, but, you're going to know where these spaces are because they're going to be covered in snow anyway, so, but we can designate it on the curb, and that way, I mean, once the DPW knows where these locations are, the bus drivers certainly know where they are, and the kids know where they are. So I think it's just to get it to the DPW. Yeah, okay, great. I think we've got everything there, Madam Clerk, and we'll deal with this at the next Legislative Affairs Committee meeting.
Second item on the agenda is Council Order 18-133, an ordinance further amending the water and sewer ordinances.
Mr. Director.
Thank you, Council. These are, excuse me, as you are aware, over the past 4.5 years, we have been implementing a automatic read water meter system in the city. We have been working on it, and during this process, we have found certain circumstances that have hindered the progress of both the Water and Sewer Department and the project. So we sat down and decided what would most help the Water and Sewer Department to continue in the future without any hindrances. We put in front of you a number of changes to the city ordinance so that we can run this almost $25 million business, so to speak, the enterprise fund, to be much more efficient. A number of people have refused to allow the city into their homes for either installing a meter or their meter isn't in the correct placement. It's not accessible. Some we found actually have pictures of some meters that are in cement. So when they pour the cement, they pour the cement over the meters. So with that, and they also have put them in areas where these meters freeze. And we want them to get them out of the areas where we want the meter to be, one, protected because it is our meter. Not only that is, it tells us how much water usage there is. So there are fines that we include in here. Then there's also rules and regulations for the Water Department to enforce. We actually have a fining because in the 4.5 years, it took about, I'd say 2 years to actually, choose the meter and choose the company to give us the meters and choose the installation company. So with that, I'm saying about 2.5 years try to put in 11,700 odd meters. We're down to the wire. We're getting there. In fact, at the next council meeting, I'm going to ask that we extended the contract for 3 of the vendors for a year. We're going to have to do it for at least another 6 months and put these ordinances in place and then require the homeowners and the businesses to allow the city into their home to put a meter in place. These meters are very accurate in their reads, and we want to make certain that we can utilize. We're attempting to actually meter every drop of water that goes through the city, so that then we can look at what the supply is from at the MWRA and decide whether or not there's some leakage between the MWRA and the supply to the city or in our system. And that ties into the consent decree. So with all of this, this is what we're looking for, and hopefully that you'll be deciding on this favorably tonight. Okay? If there are any questions, I can answer the questions.
Thank you. Committee members first. Council McKenna?
I don't have anything.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilor Novoselsky?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to our Honorable Treasurer, Director of Finance. On the section about shutting off a non-payment,
Right.
is it reasonable to shut somebody's water off for 40 days if they haven't paid? You have people that are in trouble, and, I just hate to see someone that may have kids in the house or elderly that can't afford it all at once. I'm just saying 40 days is not,
Well, we want that option to be available because there are some people who are, that can be on a decision basis, each time basis. But we want that available to us because there are those people who refuse to pay their water bill. So that we're trying to make certain that everybody pays their fair share, as you know, and that there are people who just refuse to pay their water bill. And there are also those people that we have a shut-off program that's going on now that we'll be implementing. We've already posted it to all the doors. We've had sent out numerous notifications to people who have refused to respond or let us into their home or their property or their businesses, and it's allowable, and it's done in other cities and towns that they've actually shut their water off. So we are going to be doing that because it has been a tremendous effort and a costly effort by the city in order to get these meters in place. So we're down to the wire, and each and every homestead and each and every piece of property in the city has received, if they haven't received it, put their meters in, has received at least 4 or 5 different letters and notifications and asking them, and they've had it posted. We actually went down and posted it on their properties, I think more than a month ago, saying that we are going to shut down their water, and we're going to do a reposting of the commercial properties, especially. There's 20 commercial properties that have not responded.
Okay, and I can understand that, Judge.
Yeah,
You know, but
right.
what I'm saying is, don't we, if someone doesn't pay their water bill, don't they get fined or have a penalty for not paying it? You know, a financial penalty, a percentage, if they are late paying their bill. And so I'm just calling it a fine, so, you know, if they don't pay it after 40 days, and can we put it onto the tax lien or something, or a lien on their property, and we're gonna get it back anyway? Like I said,
Right.
you know, I'm afraid of that 40 days. I think it should be extended, and you know that there's gonna be fines included in that if you say, if it was 60 or 90 days. You know, but most of the people are an average person. You have what'd you say, 400 locations that are giving you trouble?
A tough time, yes.
Okay? And I can understand if those, but, you know, 40 days for the average person to go after and threaten them. That's what you're doing. You're threatening the average person. And I just
Well-
think that 40 days should be longer, and do your percentage fines for each amount of period that they haven't paid it, and send them a tax lien or some kind of lien to their property. So we're going to get it eventually. I know we want it all at once. I just think we have to be reasonable. So
Well,
I'm questioning the 40
yeah.
days.
Okay. First off, the purpose of this is not to threaten anybody, seriously. It's just in order to do this. The 40 days was a date that we looked at and said this is what we came up with when we talked with both city solicitor and the outside counsel, because I think it was it's in relation to another section of the Massachusetts general laws. And that's why I think the 40 days, it wasn't an arbitrary figure, it was another section to the Massachusetts general laws. And that's why we refer to the 40 days. Whether or not we're going to shut somebody's water off for their 40 days, we're only going to take these into account if a piece of property is a problem piece of property. So if for some reason we have a problem with that property, we always have the ability to say, okay, you know, you haven't paid your bill and you're not doing this, you're not doing that, you know, we can shut your water off and then get into their home and do what we have to do. We have found during this, and I will say this, we have found that there was a few pieces of property that did not have meters, and the meters were tampered with. These are non-tamperable meters.
I
and-
understand that, Judge.
Right, but here's what I'm saying, we need to access into the homes, and that's what we're looking for. This is part of it.
Why penalize the whole city for a few?
We're not penalizing the whole city. That will probably be only put into account when there's a problem piece of property. It's not going to be that saying, okay, you homeowners, you don't pay in 40 days, because there's other sections of the law, as you said, that allow for, there's other sections of the law that allow for the collections of the water. The idea of this is again, is you have those problem pieces of water where we have the ability to institute a collection process against them because they are a problem.
You know, I'm looking out for the little guy. You know, I know there's big,
I'm not
there's
looking to
big
hurt
issues
anybody.
here.
If I can interrupt,
Right.
I think we're reasonable people, and I think that there's provisions under hardship cases that we can deal with that. I think he's looking at the problem people, and I think it needs to be there. That's my opinion, but I think it needs to be there, and I think I can trust that, especially George and the administration, will be kind to people that are sincerely in a hardship. I don't think this is geared towards them. This is geared towards the people that have meters or have no meters or have tampered with meters that aren't letting them put the new
It
meters in
doesn't say
now.
that, though.
Huh?
It doesn't say that. This
I
is a
know.
general thing that we're
I
going at,
understand,
and
but
everybody is,
I like to
everybody's
think that we're
affected by it.
reasonable.
So can I, just one more question
go
to
ahead.
George, if I may. George, what do we do about lost water? When, and I use an example of a service line.
Right.
Okay, someone goes and there's water coming out of the service box.
Right.
And the city determines it's on the homeowner. And
Right.
meanwhile, the water's flowing, it's not going through their meter, it's
Right.
going out onto the street.
Right.
And the homeowner doesn't fix it.
Right.
And it keeps leaking and leaking and leaking for weeks and months at a
Okay.
time. What do we do to tell the homeowner it's your responsibility in writing?
In writing, they
And
would send them a
then,
letter.
if they don't do it, does the city do it and put some kind of lien on it?
Well, the city can do that. The city can make a repair and put
Yeah, water box. It goes to the meter. From
from the street to the,
From the water box back to the house.
to the house is the
Is the
homeowner's
homeowner's-
responsibility. Right,
From the water box.
The box
out
is
into the
our
meter.
responsibility, though, isn't it?
the shut
The
off.
water box is our responsibility.
But
Shut
some-
off.
So the
sometimes
line that
leak-
goes from that,
The
you're
leak
saying
may
to
be
the...
2 inches away from the
Okay,
water box.
I got you, I
And
got
it's
you.
the homeowner's responsibility.
No, I was just trying to understand
Yeah.
what part of the line
But
you're
if the
talking about.
city-
Yes.
If the city realizes that there's one there and it's after the shut off, and that's the homeowner's responsibility, the city will go down and shut that water off, and then the homeowner would have to make the repairs. And the city could make the repairs for the homeowner, call in someone to make that repair for the homeowner, and then charge them for the amount, but that's something they don't like to do.
But is there anything in writing to that effect?
That they do that?
Yeah, that process.
Well, they could just, no, there's nothing in writing that they do that.
I
that
think it
know of.
would be a good idea that we institute some kind of process to let people know instead of just hoping that they're going to do it someday.
Well, okay,
Just
in
a
there?
suggestion.
okay,
I'm finished, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
thank you.
It's in there. Counsel McKenna?
George, I just want to know, did we fix that problem with the 200 residents that had lead leaders in their old water meters?
What we're doing with that, the council, the administration and the city council have addressed that. There's a clean water authorization that I think it was for 3.2 million, don't quote me on that, 3.2 million that is going to address the lead services in the city. And that will be taken care of, and the city will be repairing those. Hopefully, we can get that out to bid by June, and there's about, we have right now about 180 of those circumstances, but they will be taken care of. Okay.
Counsel Guanasso?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Certainly, I think that the Director of Finance has the correct approach to this, based on the fact that if we didn't have these rules of order in place, no one would pay their water bill. And in fact, there are those that historically choose to try to beat the system, for lack of better terms. And we have several hundred of those within our community, as testimony will show on observation when they tried to get into their homes. The reason for not gaining access is that they didn't want to show the illegal activity that was occurring in the property. I think that's unjustifiable based on the fact that the rest of us are paying for this water. The feed comes from the Mass Water Resources Authority. We pay for the water. They don't care how you get it, just pay for it. And so our community, we have to come up with a system, and this is a system we use, and it's a very fair system. Is water expensive? Of course it is. We're paying for the cleanup of the harbor forever and a day. But to take, for those individuals that chose not to go by the letter of the law, and every one of them, I'm sure, of those people who can't pay within 40 days, goes out to the finance director or anybody else in city government and states a case where there's the financial hardship, of course they'll be taken care of. We're not in the business of shutting people's water off. All we want to do is make certain that everybody pays for their water and the water that they use. And that's the only fair way. And I think this system is foolhardy. I think it's perfect. Everybody's accountable for the water they use. And so how much you use, that's what you pay. That's the fairest way. And I think that all these violators are doing a disservice to us as a community and all the other residents who live and abide by the law. Very simple. We're not helping any little guy, big guy, small guy. Everybody's got to pay their fair share. And I think that's reasonable. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If I may.
Thank you, Councilor Guanasso. Anybody else?
I just want to go back to that section that Councilor Novoselli was speaking about.
We saw it.
Yeah, it says bill for water, meter or service pipe or materials and labor furnished are not paid within the 40 days. It's obviously not going to be the usual circumstance, and that's what that's meant for. The usual circumstance we collected by, the collection will be made by the Massachusetts general laws on collections.
Okay, so let's have a vote of the committee. Madam
Roll-
Clerk.
Sure. Roll call of the members of the committee. Councilor McKenna?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Morabito is absent. Councilor Patch?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Powers?
Yes.
Yes. And Chairman Zambudo?
Yes.
Yes, the ordinance will be forwarded to the full city council.
Thank you.
For a vote.
That concludes the Legislative Affairs Committee, and we will meet again at our next city council meeting, which is, what's the date, Madam Clerk? The next? May 21st at 5 o'clock will be the next Legislative Affairs Committee meeting. Thank you all.